When you start talking about golf, just how much you think about golf, how frustrating golf is, how it does become a drug of sorts. And Baxter just breaks it down. That man, he is truly still learning the game every time he picks up the club, like he says in the film. Like he learns something new, and he'll tell you about it too. He's like, yeah, just today I was figuring this out. I was taking it away. That's a testimony to the game. Really, I hope that comes through in the film. For those who might watch it for the kind of race story, if you will, maybe you're not into golf. Golf facilitates relationships. Golf challenges you in ways that I've never found another sport that does. And more than anything, like this year during COVID time, just being out there, just being in the fresh air, away from all of the stuff we've been dealing with, it's been therapy for me this year.
Golf Smarter number 770. Director Paul Bonesteel on Muni, a documentary about the first golf course in North Carolina to desegregate.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Paul.
Hello, Fred. Great to be here.
Thank you for coming on. I'm glad I found you because I discovered this film I discovered it on YouTube recently and absolutely loved it and had to track you down.
Glad you did. Cool.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, I've now watched it twice. I woke up and I said, I got to see this again. So we'll put links to the film, the YouTube, in our blog post and in the show notes today. But let's talk about the film's called Muni. And why don't I'll let you go. Tell the story.
Yeah. Well, for me, Muni, just the word, says a lot right there. And folks out there who play a municipal course understand that, I think, that it's a place where I won't say anything goes, but it's just a different culture than a country club environment or a fancy club environment, public or private, right? And so we're fortunate to have one here in Asheville, North Carolina, where I live. That's the center of the film. That's the whole focus of the film. And it's traditionally just been called Muni. It's Asheville, a municipal golf course, of course, and it actually has another name right now, Asheville Golf Course, by the management company that's running it, but it's owned by the city, and it's been around since the 1920s, and it was a Donald Ross design. It was during the heyday of tourism in development, really, in Asheville and the mountains up here. So the city wanted to provide a public golf course to tourists and locals. And the game was very, very popular in the 1920s, of course, and so Donald Ross came. He also built a number of private courses in the area, but this course was his design. And today, it still feels like a Donald Ross course, I think. It's not, in the pristine condition, and hasn't been completely, sort of restored. But what you get is, again, back to what it is. It is a wonderful public course. And what intrigued me about it, and what the story is really about, is, on one level, it's that just great sense that anyone can play here. I walk 9 holes for $13, and feel like it's a steal. It is a steal. It
is a steal. Yeah.
Yeah. And, 18s, whatever, 26, $29 or something. And sometimes there's deals with carts, same price. So, since its beginning, it's been an affordable place to play golf here. And that, in its bones, I guess that's what it is a great course, flat front nine, very, undulating back nine. Relatively flat front nine for Asheville area. a lot of raised greens, a lot of Donald Ross style greens with the kind of what do you call it, the sort of dome effect, and a lot of stuff that's classic Donald Ross. But again,
that's all interesting about this municipal golf course, but that's not the compelling story that you tell.
True. I guess I went off on a little design discussion there.
You just wanted to give me a tour of, which we call a T tour, a tour of the golf course. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm getting on a plane tomorrow to play for $13. No, that's not why this movie's so compelling.
Yeah. This course was the first publicly owned course to be desegregated in well, arguably the South, but in North Carolina for sure. And what I found in my I've been playing there for some 20 years or so.
Oh, really?
A lot for the last 10 years. But what I found there is the residual effects, the wonderful residual effects of the black golf culture in Asheville. And so the film tells that story, and it's highlighted by the Skyview Golf Tournament, which started in 1960 and is still continuing today. But
wow.
in its heyday in the 60s and 70s, it was one of the handful of tournaments in the South that was predominantly black managed and black played. And these were guys who did the circuit, who were either flirted with or were on the PGA Tour or working to get on the tour. So this was golf at a very high level. And in Asheville in particular, it was also accompanied by just a big community response. A lot of people here saw it as an annual pilgrimage, and so people would come, locals would play, of course, but really the 60s and 70s into the 80s, relatively big name golfers would come through. Lee Elder won the tournament, 4 years in a row in 61 through 65. Folks like that. And so anyway, I still probably haven't gotten to answer your question exactly.
We got time.
Yeah. You said we're in no hurry here. So what I wanted to do with the film is just let these guys tell that story. I mean, and the fact that a handful of the cast, these guys that I met out there and befriended, I mean, they're in their late 80s, early 90s, and they're still either hanging out there or playing, and they have loved the game their whole lives. They started as caddies. They couldn't play on the courses that they caddied. They snuck in a hole here or there. They could hit at the range and no one was watching, that kind of story.
Yeah.
And then they would sneak on, again. But in the, they had Caddies Day, which started on a Monday. They could play like after, everybody else went off, if you were a caddy there at Muni and some of the other courses in the area. But then in 1954, after kind of sticking to one day a week on Caddies Day, then the floodgates opened and they could play anytime they wanted. And that really is the heart of the story, which is what happened then and then after that, is just how they these guys fell in love with the game on another level, on a competitive level, on a social level. And now today, Asheville Municipal Course is it's the most kind of integrated and diverse golf course I've ever played on. I'm sure there's competitors for that around the country, and but as a white guy who grew up with easy access to golf, to kind of learn this story and kind of see segregation and then desegregation through the golf course lens, that was really why I wanted to tell the story.
And it's quite timely. I mean, this film was released in October of 2020, as we're in the midst of the pandemic, and we went through an incredibly difficult summer in the United States, with all the racial injustice that people were feeling, and everything is being brought out. So the timeliness of this film, I thought, was fascinating. Were you motivated? Well, you couldn't have known, right?
Yeah. Of course, not how intense 2020 would be. But this story and these voices have been, needed to be heard for a while. So, even 4 years ago when I started making the film, and I mean, I just had a sense that, like, mostly I just wanted to make the film because these guys needed, I wanted them to tell their story, and I wanted them to be heard. As things played out, of course, this summer and the awareness of institutional racism that still exists. I mean, that people probably kind of bristle at that, but it's there and it's still around. And, and so telling this story is a way to say it was, it changed then. We've been working on it, sometimes more, sometimes less, but this is still an issue. And if you go to, golf is a litmus test. You look around some courses, you don't see any black faces there. You just don't. And there are still country clubs here in the South, especially, that it's not easy for someone to become a member. It may be technically, allowed, but there's still attitudes out there, and there's still courses where people are uncomfortable playing. It's the truth, So anyway, these guys and their spirit and Billy Gardenhite, he's a hero of mine. Like his attitude through all of it was expressed in the film. But truly, he wanted to play the game, and he would put up with the bullshit to deal with it. But he also would push back, and he, and it became running that tournament and making the tournament huge was a big deal for him. And it was his statement, in the world, and a heck of a golfer too, just a heck of a golfer.
Let's take a time out. We'll be right back and continue the conversation with Paul Bonesteel on the film Muni. When the course in Asheville desegregated, I'm sure that you did a tremendous amount of research making this film, but did you get a sense of the local reaction when they tried to open it up?
Yeah, it wasn't good. And,
I bet.
There's a bit more to that story than I tell in the film. I simplify it. I say something about the neighborhood. The course was built with the city built it, but it was also built in partnership with a developer. And now, of course, it's almost 100-year-old neighborhood. But then it was one of the newer parts of town. And then, of course, in the 50s, there were still lots for sale and things. But there was a movement by a private group to try to buy the course from the city, just to alleviate the segregation, the desegregation issue. And that's what Billy and some guys protested, and it was kept in the city hands. But the primary reason why that effort was made was they wanted to keep it a private club, a white only club. So the reaction, by talking to some other folks who you get different stories from different people. But there were letters to the editor and lots of, kind of typical for the time, letters of like, they can play on Monday, or, they have their day, stuff like that just by today's standard just makes you cringe to think you're going to be told you can only play on Tuesday now, that's the black day to play golf. I mean, come on, so there was, there were those responses. Asheville's a pretty progressive city, and even in the 20s, it was thought of as a progressive city, but it's not, it's not that progressive.
You're still in the South.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I hate to stereotype it as the South, but there was a Civil War. One of the stories that was told that kind of like slipped by and didn't get pursued, but and I don't remember who said it, but he talked about when they were sneaking out on golf courses when they were caddies and they were kids and they only had a 7-iron to share between 3 guys. He said that, we would have to play, we would sneak on until late, but then we had to be gone by like 7 p.m. or something, or they inferred that, they couldn't be out at night.
Yeah.
It was dangerous.
Absolutely. And he was referring to a local country club where he caddied during the day. And I heard the story from not used in the film, but 2 other caddies that, if you were walking the street, they had to be out of there at sunset, because if you were walking the streets at night, it made people very nervous, and hello, what does that sound like? It sounds like 2020, unfortunately, but yeah, that was the culture. And sadly, to some extent, it still is, that if they were walking home from caddying, and would get stopped by the police and get hauled home or out of the neighborhood. So that was just one of the things that they dealt with. But they loved caddying, and some of those guys waxed on poetically about how much they liked the guys they caddied for. I mean, you got to be good friends. That's the relationship. Sure. When you're out there competing and you're helping the guy out and you're carrying the bag and you're having snacks for lunch and you do it day in, day out, a relationship forms. And
absolutely. I mean, that's why we play golf, is to have those kind of relationships. But when you have the same caddy all the time, of course you're going to build a relationship, right?
Yep.
Amazing.
And that's a side story to this. And it comes up later in the film a little bit, that caddying was really the motivator to learning the game for these guys. And of course that doesn't exist anymore. And so a kid, white or black or any, color, can't go out and make $5 at age 13 or 14, and they also don't get introduced to the game. They're playing a video game or they're doing something else. So it's just it's a disappeared tradition, that actually started a lot of people in golf, a lot of people of color in golf, so.
Yeah. And my sense is that in 2020, a 13-year-old's going to go, I'm carrying this guy's bag for 4 hours and I get $5. Forget it. Not going to happen. Dad, I need 10.
No, that's true. That's true.
One of the characters that you introduce in the film, Pete McDaniel, and he's a writer who grew up in the area, grew up playing there. And those were all the people who were his mentors and his teachers and his friends and his family, as he said. He wrote the book Uneven Lies. And you got a chance to interview him throughout the film and get great stories. Was that, tell me about how that came about, that you got to be with him?
Well, Pete is just a great storyteller. Journalists are who you want in your film,
Absolutely.
They've processed things, they have written things, they think in stories.
They have a vocabulary.
Yeah. Exactly.
They can talk.
And what's interesting is I grew up nearby in Hendersonville, and Pete was actually writing for the Hendersonville newspaper when I was a teenager, so I would read his stories quite often in the paper, and then 20, almost 30 years later, I'm interviewing him for a film, and that was fun. And his career, he's had a lot of success writing for major magazines and working with Tiger Woods and some things. And he is just the sweetest guy, I know I have a good film when people answer the phone and I ask them if they want to be involved and they say, absolutely. When do you want to interview me? When do you want to talk?
Wow.
and that's how he was, and that's how all these guys were. A couple of them I had to persuade a little bit more, but what I mean about when I know I have a good film, because when people want to tell you the story, when people have a story to tell, you can just sense it. Yeah, and when I mentioned it to Pete, even though he'd written a book about it and he hadn't gone into quite the same storyline that I have with these guys, and I was trying to keep it very personal and very intimate, and so it was great that he made it up. He does make it up for a lot of the sky views, and is seen frequently at Muni. So that was great.
Yeah, beautiful. That's great. All right, we can take another time out. We'll be right back. So Pete's book, Uneven Lies, turned into a different documentary, Uneven Fairways, narrated by Samuel Jackson. Are you familiar with that film?
Yeah, it's really good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes in a different direction, thank goodness, than yours. So it's a great 1-2 punch to watch the two films together, because between the two, that's the length of a movie. Right? You'll get about an hour and a half between the two, right?
Yep. I think that's...
And that was more about the UGA, right? Forming of a black golf association, competitive golf association.
Yeah, I hadn't even seen that film until after I finished mine.
Oh wow!
I was aware that he'd made it, but I kind of just stayed away from it I didn't want it to kind of twist my brain up a little bit.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, I understand that. But the part of what you did in the film that I loved, now I'm going to get into the producer talk here, because I produce video as well. And I love storytelling. I implore my friends all the time, you've got a video camera in your pocket. Get your parents to tell stories, get your aunts and uncles, get everyone to tell stories, because you'll lose them and they're just too good. And now that you can just record them, you'll always have them. Please do. So that's part of what I love, that you found these guys like Bax, right? That had these amazing stories.
Yeah. And I guess, truly the origin of me, wanting to get these guys on camera was hanging out at Muni. And sometimes I'd play a few holes because I'd catch up with somebody. Sometimes I'd be sitting around waiting to tee off and chatting with Baxter. But taking, to your point about using the technology, taking that next step in a relationship to say, hey, when did you first play golf? Or how did you learn the game? Where did you grow up? I'm always amazed at how you start a little snowball and you push it down a mountain, but you have to start that ball rolling. You have to engage in that relationship and that conversation. And once I did that, because I'm just a curious kind of guy and I like to have these conversations. Then I started hearing the stories, and I was like, wow, you've been playing here since then. And I was like, I've heard something about the Skyview, but I had no idea it had such kind of volume and impact in the kind of black golf, history. And so it kind of just seeped out of these guys as I was talking to them. Baxter is he's so fun, and he's over there right now, I'm sure, just standing at the podium trying to wrangle everybody and get them out on time or get them going. But he'll talk all afternoon with you if you want to sit there on that bench and talk.
That sounds like heaven. Well, that's what the podcast to me is that snowball. The problem with it is, after doing close to 800 episodes, the snowball is so big that I'm behind it trying to hold back. It is out of control. But I love the storytelling aspect. I did a national radio syndication back in the 80s, which I've turned into a podcast. I've brought them back, but it's baseball players telling stories about other things than their salary and their batting average. It's called Radio Baseball Cards. So I've always been into, tell me your story. Everyone's got a story. Let's hear it.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, what I found with these guys, all of them, like, and anyone over there at Muni, any golfer really, when you start talking about golf, is just how much it becomes part of your, how much you want to talk about golf, or how much you think about golf, how frustrating golf is, how it just, how it does become a drug of sorts. I think,
An addiction.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah. And Baxter just breaks it down. That man, he is truly still learning the game. Every time he picks up the club, like he says in the film, like he learns something new, and he'll tell you about it too. He's like, yeah, just today I was figuring this out. I was taking it away, that's a testimony to the game. I mean, and that really, I hope that comes through in the film, is, for those who might watch it for the kind of, race story, if you will. Maybe you're not into golf. Golf facilitates relationships. Golf challenges you in ways that I've never found another sport that does. And it just, and more than anything, like this year during COVID time, just being out there, just being in the fresh air, away from all of the stuff we've been dealing with. It's been therapy for me this year. And
for so many.
Yeah.
And that's probably why the industry is exploding right now. They're having a resurgence like they haven't seen since the early 2000s, when everyone was following Tiger. There's so many people that have never picked up a golf club that are out on the golf course, because it's really the perfect activity in the summer for families. Mm-hmm. Winter is going to be a difficult thing. One of the other people that you interviewed that I found interesting, was it just luck that Harold Varner III, PGA Tour player, was out there, or did you arrange that? How did that work?
It was pure luck.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
I got to the course one day, and the guy behind the desk said, "Oh, HV3's out here. You need to talk to him." And I was like, sure. How can I find him? He was like, "Well, he's on number 3 right now. Get out there." And so I ran down there with the camera, and I was like, completely, caught him completely out of the blue. I said, I was like, "Harold, I'm Paul Bonesteel. I'm making a film about Muni and municipal golf and how important it is. And like, can I ask you a few questions?" And I mean, he was holding his driver in his hand. He was like, "Sure." and so I was like, I'm rolling, and I asked him a few questions, and then he smashed one down the 4th fairway, and he was gone. And I talked to him later, and got his contact info and such. And, but that was, he grew up down the road a ways, but, often comes up this way, and had played the Skyview as a youth golfer, and was playing with some buddies, and they were playing 36 holes that day, riding around, drinking beer, and having a good time, and smashing the ball down the middle, So that, and then I think they were going whitewater rafting the next day, So it was practice and fun. And that's another reason Muni's great,
Yeah, fortuitous. I mean, just like, and that you had your camera. I guess you have your camera with all the time if you're in the midst of a production, right? Are you always carrying your microphones and your camera in your bag?
I'm really not. And I say that like, yeah, but that day I was there to shoot for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, and you bring up an interesting point about like life and golf and filmmaking. And, I mean, Muni, I went into this very cautiously, because even these relationships, even these guys who I'd met, I didn't know whether I actually wanted to expose them to filmmaking, like and the course. I didn't know if I wanted to kind of like turn my favorite place in the universe into a place where I'm working, a place where I'm having to kind of go down and express it in some way. It just brought an interesting burden along, because my playground turned into my work. a little bit, so I had to be careful. I remedied that by just playing a lot, like the camera was nowhere to be seen. And of course the best sunsets and the most beautiful moments happened when the camera wasn't there. And I just used that as inspiration. I was just like, this is the spirit of Muni. If I can remember how good that felt and how pretty that was, maybe I can come back, tomorrow night and get an image that's pretty. But I saw so many beautiful things that I didn't have my camera around. And by that, I mean, guys playing together, sunsets and bear crossing the fairway, just things that are like, oh, only in Asheville. Oh yeah, we have black bears around the course.
How come I see more alligators in Florida than I see bears crossing in North Carolina?
Yeah, no.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're around.
All right, I need to take a break from that one. We'll be right back. Since we're going with the golf lifestyle theme this week, talking about media instead of instruction, let's continue with that theme on Golf Smarter Mulligans as well. Our guest on episode 86 from 2009 is Golf Channel journalist and reporter Jimmy Roberts, discussing his book, Breaking the Slump, How Great Players Survive Their Darkest Moments in Golf and What You Can Learn from Them. In our conversation, Jimmy shares how he got intimate stories from some of the greatest golfers of our generation. Everybody has a story, but there are few reporters who can get people to expose the intimate and sometimes painful nature of adversity the way Jimmy can. He shares stories from Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Dan Jensen, David Duval, and this one from Davis Love III's father, the legendary golf instructor, Davis Love Jr.
My favorite quote from the book is something that came from Davis Love III's father. Davis Love Jr. himself, of course, was a great golf instructor who learned from Harvey Penick. This is when Davis Jr. was playing at the University of Texas, and Harvey was the coach. And Harvey walked by the tee one day, and he saw Davis hitting to a practice green, which is about 150 yards away. And Harvey said, "Davis, get me some 5-irons on that green up there." And Davis turned around and looked at him and said, "Coach, that green's 150 yards away. I can hit 7-iron." And Harvey just looked at him and said, "Davis, get me some 5-irons on that green up there." And he walked away. And the point was, slow it down. You don't always have to do everything you do in a maximum way. Sometimes the answer is to try less hard. Sometimes the answer is to swing not so hard. Believe me, if that doesn't apply for life as well as in the game of golf, then I don't know what does.
That's episode 86 of Golf Smarter Mulligans, featuring a woozy Jimmy Roberts as he had back surgery 2 days prior to the interview and was home from the hospital for only a few hours. Yet Jimmy provides us with background on his reporting for Wide World of Sports, ESPN, and NBC Golf. The episode is being released this Friday, and both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are free and available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please subscribe, and when you do, you'll be notified immediately when a brand new episode of either has downloaded to your favorite podcast app. As the credits are rolling on your film, I'm very curious to know, because like I said, I bring some microphones, I bring a little camera with me, and my phone is always in my pocket. So I'm always ready to go when I'm out on the course, but I'm like, I'm playing golf. I don't want to shoot right now. Right. But going through the credits, I noticed one cameraman, one sound guy. I mean, really, did you do all the camera work except for the drone shots?
Pretty much. And wow. I tell you, the shooting of this was a real challenge. And trying to capture all the scenes that I got of the groups of guys golfing. I was just riding along or walking along, and it's amazing how quick the game is played, even in a foursome, when you're trying to shoot it. When you're trying
can you guys come back over here? I need that shot again.
Yeah. And when you're in the game too, you're just concerned about hitting the next shot. You're right. Thinking you pick your club, you know your distance, and then whack, you do it. And I told these guys, I'm just a fly on the wall. I'm just following along. But part of me wanted to be like, hey, whoa, Billy, stop for a second. I'm not in focus. And I really didn't do that because I didn't want to kind of pollute the experience. I didn't want to become that guy who they don't want around.
Exactly.
But it did show me how trying to shoot the game of golf and trying to play the game of golf are two very different things. And I don't feel like I was completely successful at psychologically capturing all that goes on in your head while you're playing around. That's impossible to do, I think, with a camera. But that's why I did have to play a lot, put the camera down and just play, because I tried. I actually experimented with using a GoPro with me and my friends when we were playing, or when I would go out to Muni, and I recorded some experiences, thinking that might be a way to sort of illustrate the game or some of the interactions in a way and it just didn't work. Cinematically, it didn't work. Narratively, it didn't work. So there was a lot of experimenting going on to try to capture the essence. And I kind of decided there's parts of golf you can't capture on film, and these guys talking about it, I think does the best job of expressing, their passion and their frustration and their interests. And their long love affair.
Yeah. It's kind of like taking photographs in the woods. It's like they come out, they just don't come out because you don't get the depth. You don't get the texture. Right.
Yeah. All the sensory stuff going on too, that makes that place special. That's a challenge.
What kind of camera? And I'm sorry to get geeky on you, but what camera were you shooting with?
Sony FS7 for most of it. Big 4K camera. Yeah.
You had So dragging it along there. So okay, we got the fact that you were just the only cameraman. But the other part that I loved about the film was your music selection, because you really pulled off. I mean, it threw me right back to those 1970s. I hate using it, those blaxploitation movies, right? Shaft and all that stuff. You really brought that feel. The music was perfect.
Well, thanks. What I discovered in the process was that music, that soul music, that feel, which obviously is expressed in some of those films you were talking about, or some of that vibe, I guess, was legit, and I was so pleased when I was over at Billy's house one time and I saw this whole stack of 45s, underneath a bunch of magazines and stuff. And I started looking at them and I was like, and these were those soul records that are emulated in the soundtrack, because that was what he was listening to. So that made me feel good about that choice, instead of, the stereotypical or something like that. It could be seen as that, but more than anything, like golf, one reason I needed the up-tempo music was I'm just keenly aware that golf is sort of boring to some people, and if the film had tempo where it needed tempo, and if the film had some fun. Golf is fun. Golf, whether you're walking or riding a cart, for me, it moves very quickly. Like, again, I'm always walking. So I'm walking, carrying the bag, putting it down, playing. There's a rhythm to the game. And there's rhythm to music, of course. So I wanted to express some of that golf is fun, and that, when you go to the golf course, you can have a good time, and with or without a soundtrack in your cart, that's debatable, but, it's a rhythm.
And I found that it's actually to support what you're saying is I find it hard to shoot video when I'm on the course, because there is a rhythm, because it goes by quickly. You don't have time to take out and do a 30-second take, on what you're doing. It seems like there's a lot going on at that time.
And at Muni too, I mean, honestly, there's always someone in front of you and there's always someone behind you. I mean, there's times of day when you can get out there and be by yourself, which of course I love more than anything, but, man, the volume at Muni right now is crazy, and has been ever since I've played there. You can go out there at 5 o'clock.
Decades.
Yeah, 5 o'clock at night, and you have half an hour of sunlight left, and there'll be guys teeing off. I mean, like, how many holes are you going to play? They're going to get like 3 holes in, but sometimes 3 holes is all you need, or so. But that's another reason for the rhythm, is just keeping the pace of play up.
Well, think about, you talk about, you liked having the upbeat music, which I thought was such a great choice. I love the way it made it feel. But you think about, like, when you're watching the Masters and the music that they, the lush strings and this slow.
Yeah, I didn't want it to be pretentious.
Right? It's like, come on, right?
Yeah. I wanted to push back on that idea that golf is elitist, pretentious piano tones. And, believe me, I'm a huge Augusta. I mean, I've never been there, but I love, everyone loves the Masters. But to me, that's part of the game that is dismissive of so much of the rest of the world. Come on, let's play the game. Let's get kids out there. Let's get women out there more. Let's get let's
get everybody out there.
Yeah.
Make it, but they don't want it too crowded. Can't be too crowded with people who can't. Okay, stop. But the Masters, during this time, it's interesting that it's called the Masters. I know that people in the real estate industry are not using master bedroom anymore or master bathroom. It's the primary bedroom. I doubt that, people are going to start. I didn't see a lot of people protesting outside of Augusta National that the name is called the Masters. I don't think they really care. But how do you feel about Lee Elders getting honored next year?
Right.
By the ceremonial first shot.
I think it's awesome. Is it late in coming? Sure. It's late in coming, but I think they were upfront about the fact that it's late, but here we're doing it, and it's the right thing to do. And that's what a lot of white people can do right now, which is show up now and say, these attitudes have been around for too long, and I'm making a change. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to try to be different. And I think that's just important for all of us to think about, because subtle or overt, there's some institutional stuff, that we're dealing with. It's funny, for the first time in my life, I watched the Masters this year and had that same thought. I was like, that name really isn't very good.
Really? Oh my God. I thought it was like the only person that even crossed that. And I didn't want to talk about it with people.
No. I mean, I'm surprised it took me this long to like make that association, but that's the white guy. I mean, not going, oh, the Masters. Maybe there's double usage there, but
I think that we can be rest assured that these are masters of their craft.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's legit, but still, it's tough.
It is Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It is Georgia. It is, a place that has not been too friendly. All right. Don't need to go deep into that. This is a golf podcast. Let's keep it there. I just want to say congratulations again. You did a phenomenal job. I love documentaries. I love golf, and putting those two together and teaching me about a part of the game that I didn't know, that I so appreciate learning about. Thank you so much for the effort, for your time in doing it, and for the product that you put out. Great job.
You're very welcome. I tell you, the film was passion. Like, I wanted to tell this story, and I am thrilled because it kind of came out of the blue that some people at Callaway Golf heard about the film, and then they said, "Hey, we're going to help you get it on the Golf Channel." And I was like, "Great," because that's where it needs to go. Like, these are the people that need to see the film, and that literally came out of the blue. I made the film and was going to kind of distribute it however I could, maybe a PBS thing, maybe. But then this opportunity came up. A good friend of mine made a connection for me, and now it's on the Callaway golf.com/Muni page and YouTube page. And I love seeing people's comments too. I mean, there's a lot of people are receiving it well. And as a filmmaker who does something out of passion, the fact that people are seeing your work, I mean, that's what you do it for. And yep. I got an email from a woman in Florida, and this means so much to me. She said, my son is black and he loves the game, but he doesn't see any people of color playing the game. And so he's getting discouraged. He doesn't have any instructors that are black, and he's very discouraged. And we saw your film on the Golf Channel, and he is completely enthused now. He feels like he has a place in the game. And you know, I have a son who's 15 and he's black, you know, and I know what he's up against right now. Like, I know the kind of things he's dealing with. So to have that kid have golf as an outlet out there and feel good about it and feel great about it, you know, that was just such a win for me, to get that kind of response, to know that you can make a film and actually have an effect in the world. That's what we all want. Wow. You know, that's what we want to do. So
yeah, that email or that comment on it, it's kind of like that drive on the 18th hole when you've said, I don't care anymore, and you have a perfect shot and you go, I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just drags you in one more time. Well, I was going to finish, but now that you brought that up, I'm curious, when you started out on this project, what did you think it was going to be, since you didn't have Callaway Golf involved at the beginning?
Yeah. You know, it's a long story. I've made a lot of different kinds of films, and I do a lot of commercial work. I wanted this film to just be kind of a social experiment for myself. I didn't go into it thinking I'm making a 5-minute film or a 30-minute film or an hour-long film. I said I want to use my documentary kind of role to get to know these guys better. And so I honestly thought that I might be doing just oral histories on video of these guys, because I didn't know whether I could glue it all together. I didn't know until late in the game all these photographs from the Skyview Golf Tournament from the 60s and 70s, they were not accessible and not available. I didn't know if they existed. I had like a handful, like less than 5 photographs from the 60s. And so I really didn't know if I could tell that story. So I didn't know if it was going to be completely contemporary, you know, meaning a film just about like Muni on a day of, or whether we were going to go back in time and kind of tell a story. So I tried not to have expectations. Of course, your job as a filmmaker is to kind of create the film after you decide what it's going to be about. So about halfway through, but after I got invested in it and after I started doing these interviews, then I realized I had a story. Then I realized that this probably could tie up into a narrative piece. So I got into it very experimentally, primarily because I didn't know the story well enough, and I didn't want to layer my expectations on top of their story. I wanted them to inform me about the story, not, oh, I'm going to do a film about black golf. I wanted black golf to tell me the story, you know? And so I just had to do it that way, because I was very aware of like just whiteness, you know, and like taking advantage of a story because it seems like it's a good idea or something. Of course, it was a good idea, but I didn't want to do it just for that reason, you know?
So was it the interviews that you realized that this is the glue that's going to put the whole thing together? Or what was it?
Yeah. Well, when I learned the depth of the stories in terms of, Caddies, late 40s, early 50s, these guys were caddying. And then I realized it crossed over into desegregation, and then of course then I learned the Skyview story. I was like, whoa, this is good. These guys are still alive. They're right here in front of me, and they're going to be able to tell me this story. So yeah, that was the key for me to think of it as a film more than, again, sort of an oral history or a experiment.
Well, it's from Bonesteel Films, and it's available on the Golf Channel. It's available on YouTube. It's available on the Callaway website, and it's available on Paul's. And it's available on the Golf Smarter podcast site as well, because we'll link to it in today's show notes. Paul, congratulations. This has been great. I appreciate your time and you being so vulnerable and sharing your story with us.
Fred, thank you. I like your take on golf, and thanks for doing what you do.
Here's a strange announcement that I've never made before, but I need to keep you up to speed. If you remember our conversation on episode 762 with Sam Hahn, CEO of Lab Golf, remember it was the lie angle balanced direct force putters? Well, apparently the discount he offered the Golf Smarter community has upset some of his retail clients because customers were coming in and asking for the Golf Smarter discount, which happened to be lower than the discount they were offering. So Sam regretfully has had to remove the offer. So if you took advantage of it, that's awesome. If you didn't, I'm sorry, you missed your chance. But if you're looking to spend some money or want something substantial for your holiday gift list, which obviously a new putter, a new club is substantial, well, then make sure you prepare yourself for the offer from next week's episode. Our guest is 4-time PGA Tour winner Chip Beck, a member of the exclusive 59 Club, and he wants to give you lessons. I'm not kidding. I'm not going to go on about his offer. You'll have to hear it for yourself. But let me just say that I had so much fun hearing his amazing and incredible stories from his time on the tour in the 80s and the 90s that it was one of the longest interviews I've done in years. And I'm sure you're going to be entertained by it. But the offer for lessons is also the introduction of an amazing new artificial intelligence generated app called Perfect Motion. And that's all I'm going to give you for now. So stay tuned for that. But if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, or things that you'd like to hear on an upcoming interview, I'd love to hear from you. Just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.